Hey! Today I want to talk to you about chat control, but not necessarily what it is, even though we'll get into it a little bit, but who's to blame? Because I've read a lot of articles online that put the EU and sometimes Denmark specifically in the spotlight, pointing fingers. Well, this is the EU's fault, this is the European Commission's fault, this is Denmark's fault. And understandably, it can be confusing. Like, okay, I don't like this, but who am I angry at? Who do I talk to? Where do I direct this disapproval? And I think there are some very good sources online which are linked in the description. Definitely consult the description of this video if you want to learn more. Because again, this video is not going in depth into what chat control is. We'll touch on it, but mainly who's the bad guy? Who's the bad guy here? Who's trying to poison the water supply? Let's get into it. So we'll look at two culprits. The first one being the EU and its different institutions, and the second potential culprit being the country of Denmark. My buddy, my friend, Denmark. Denmark has the presidency of the Council of the EU right now, which means that they get to determine the legislative priorities moving forward, what the EU will change, how it will change it, what are the priorities to look at next. But before we get into the culprits, let's first take a look very briefly at what chat control is, what it's meant to do, where does it come from, and where it is right now. So the term chat control is the not so affectionate nickname given to the proposal for a regulation of the European Parliament and the Council laying down the rules to prevent and combat child sexual abuse. Now, just looking at the name of this proposal, I gotta be honest, arguing against it based on the name alone is hard, and that's why the opponents of this gave it the name chat control, because chat control really underlines what is wrong with this proposal, and that makes complete sense, because arguing against protecting children online from child sexual abuse is, well, it's a tough task, and it doesn't really have great optics in the larger debate. And I think I can be brave here, and I can be real with you here for a moment, and I hope you'll forgive me if I admit that publicly that I am against child sexual abuse. I think it's a bad thing. I think that's bad. Thank you. Obviously, nobody's against the idea of protecting children online against harassment, against sexual abuse especially. So the problem is not really that the proposed regulation wants to combat sexual abuse, it's how it proposes we go about it, and that's why it's so controversial. But in a very brief nutshell, the proposal for the regulation, chat control, is, as the name suggests, controversial because it wants to protect children by requiring service owners of certain online platforms that may meet certain criteria, this is all still being negotiated, that they monitor and essentially read the online content of users. Either they monitor it online on some platforms when online content is posted, or they read encrypted personal messages before they become encrypted client-side and are sent to the intended recipient. So this essentially means that if you send a message to a friend on a platform like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal or Rakuten Viber, yeah, some users, some Rakuten fans. All right, check this out. I was joking about Rakuten Viber earlier, but apparently they have over 820 million active users. So shout out Rakuten Viber. Good job. This video is not sponsored by Rakuten Viber, although, you know, hit me up. Rakuten Viber, the only platform with a vibe. We're the top hot messaging platform. We're the top hot messaging platform. With us, you won't say viber, but yeah, maybe don't reach out. Viber, I hardly know her. Okay, I think I'm done with this. I think that's it. What was I talking about? So yeah, again, screening online content either on platforms that are meeting certain criteria where there is a potential danger of children being exposed. There's a helicopter, and my Casio watch has gone off at the same time. This is the perfect storm of noise. All right. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Helicopter. Helicopter! Whew, what a rush. So yeah, in essence, monitoring personal messages automatically by algorithm, not by people, but still monitoring personal messages before they leave your phone to check for content that could be harmful for children and exploit children online. This is why the opponents of the regulation call it chat control, because all signs point to it being effectively requiring certain providers to screen personal messages for content that may amount to child sexual abuse, but of course could be misused to monitor everything from sensitive personal information to your political views, political dissent against the ruling party, or even your own private pictures. And then again, they do say that this is done by automated processes, but we don't live in a perfect world. And there's a lot of security experts online, people that have been in the industry for decades, saying, well, this sounds great, but there are glaring potentials for misuse and abuse. And nobody can really guarantee that once you set up these processes, bad actors won't be able to infiltrate and somehow get access to your personal information. And those are private bad actors. But then, of course, governments could, and some governments kind of do. There have been European governments in the past that do like to spy on dissidents, on journalists, on people that they see as a threat to their national security. I mean, famously, Viktor Orban was very much happy to use the Pegasus spying software to spy on his opponents, and he was by no means alone. That is why many people see this as a perhaps well-meaning proposal to protect children online. As important as that is, but going too far and limiting personal privacy online in order to achieve this goal. And then it's a question of proportionality. Should we give up freedoms and take these immense risks? Even there are assurances that that won't happen, but should we take these immense risks to protect children online? And partially, I don't know. I completely see the point that the EU and member states are trying to make, especially Denmark, France, Finland, Austria, other member states. I mean, positions are changing, but the EU institutions themselves, I understand protecting children online is a top priority. At the same time, how far are we willing to go to make sure that protection is upheld in its entirety? And this is a problem with safety in any way. Any kind of safety assurances will require some amount of freedoms to be given up, right? Even something as simple as policing in a civilized country takes away freedoms because the police can stop you, they can ask you for certain personal information, they can detain you, they can, with a warrant in most modern democracies, but enter your home, search your property, and those are things that fundamentally interfere with some very important personal rights. So the question is not, should we protect children? The answer is obviously yes. The question is, to what extent do we give up or risk giving up personal freedoms to assure this protection? And is that protection even effective enough in the first place to warrant such a giant derogation, such a giant limitation of fundamental rights? And this is why a lot of opponents online, and not just online, the German Ministry of Justice and a lot of MEPs have been quite vocal about being against this position. The Polish presidency, which was the one before the Danish presidency took over, famously was against chat control, yet tried to find a compromise to pass that legislation, to get rid of it, to agree and move on. And we'll see why in a bit. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't see a bad guy in this yet. There seems to be two competing interests, both well-meaning. One is the well-meaning interest of protecting children online, especially from sexual abuse, which I am completely for and understand, and I think you will be hard-pressed to find somebody who doesn't. And on the other side, obviously, are real concerns about our freedom, privacy online, and about the way our conversation online that we think is private is being interfered with, scanned with, even though automatically assessed, and the potential implications on our freedoms, our democracy, and how free we can feel chatting, using these apps, expressing ourselves online. Fundamentally, this is a freedom of expression problem. And the question is, how much do we allow policing it to assure some level of safety for our children? Reminding you of my disclaimer again, this is a very brief overview kind of insight into the topic, very nutshell, very much incomplete. So if you want to learn more, if you want to get engaged with this, or if you even want to talk to your family about this kind of stuff and you want to speak with some authority, with some knowledge, I encourage you to check the description where I'll include some links so that you can learn more from honestly sources that have probably spent more than an hour researching this online. All right, I know you're probably angry now. Maybe you're thinking, this is ridiculous. These are my fundamental liberties. How dare the government go and read my chats, even claiming it's automatic, whatever. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it, dude. Slay. Ugh. So let me harvest this anger from you. Let me... Oh, that's good anger. That's quality anger. Brilliant. And let me take this anger and help you point it at someone. Because look, I am concerned. I'm kind of angry as well, right? So it's good to know who's at blame. Who's at blame? Who's to blame? Yes, English. Who's to blame here? Is it the European Union? Is it Denmark? Who do I complain about in the YouTube comments? Who do I portray as Sojak in my Reddit political circle jerk group? Guys, this is important.
Based.
Well, you know, as I said at the beginning, it's complicated. And I'm sorry, okay? I know you're getting probably really impatient, thinking, I've got this anger, it's ready. Where do I... Just show me. Where does it go? Completely understandable. Just one more minute. We'll get to it. I promise we'll get to it. Let me explain why it's not so easy to figure out who's the culprit. Who do we point our fingers at? Who is this evil, disgusting miscreant hiding in the shadows, watching us struggle with our little messaging apps, watching us struggle create an account on Rakuten Viber for the 50th fucking time. I mean, what is Rakuten? Who's using 820 million? You might be thinking, this is ridiculous. I know who's to blame. The EU's to blame. This is stupid. Like Ursula von der Leyen, the German lady with the hair, she's to blame, right? Like, why is this beginning? I know this video is just paid EU propaganda. I know exactly who to blame. And I don't like it, this kind of mentality, but I agree that it's super easy to get it nowadays, because traditionally a lot of media really can't be bothered to take the time to understand the basics of how the EU works, or they don't want to understand it because they are paid by people whose interest it is to paint Brussels or the Commission specifically as this big bad guy who's responsible for everything. And that's really, really convenient. But unfortunately, that's not how anything works. Again, not really the time for a deep dive into this, so I'll put some basic info about how the EU works in the description if you want to learn more. Maybe I'll make a video about this at some point if there is interest, if I feel like we need to. But for now, you just need to know that yes, the Commission is the one who proposes legislation in the European Union. It's the only institution that can propose legislation in the European Union. It's not like Ursula is sitting at her office browsing Tinder and she keeps getting dick pics and then she decides, oh yes, I know how to get rid of this. Yeah, I love the accent change. I think I went from like British or whatever to German. Fascinating. I know what to do. I'll create a proposal, for a regulation, and in that regulation, it will automatically scan the pic before it's sent, and that way I won't get any more dick pics, and I can mask it as a children protection. Yeah, genius. So that way I'll be okay. Look, Germans, I would apologize for that accent, but it was so bad I don't even think it was technically German. So we're good. Yeah, we're cool. Bump it. Nice. That's just not what the Commission does in the EU system, and I can prove it. First, if you hate yourself and you decide to read at least the beginning of the original proposal for chat control, not all of it because, Jesus, but the beginning of it, the explanatory memorandum, that's what it's called. The very beginning, the explanatory memorandum, there are some very legitimate reasons, first of all, where they explain why they feel like this proposal is needed. And one thing specifically stood out to me. They cite that at least 1 of 5 children falls victim to sexual violence during childhood, and that a 2021 global study found that more than 1 in 3 respondents, more than 33% of the people asked, had been asked to do something sexually explicit online during their childhood, and over half had experienced a form of child sexual abuse online. Those numbers were mind-blowing to me, and I realized how ignorant I was of this issue. And again, no one's arguing against this. I think everybody can agree this is horrible. These statistics to me, and I think to you as well, are quite surprising. And so something needs to be done. The memorandum continues, it goes on to explain some really legitimate issues such as these that need to be addressed. Again, I don't think anyone is questioning this. They draw from different sources. They mention the UN Charter, the rights of the child. So there are quite a few sources they take these things from. It's not just the Commission that makes this up one day. Crucially, even though the Commission is the one and the only one in the EU who has the right to propose legislation, the Commission does so very often. I would say even in the majority of cases, they do so, and this memorandum also says that the Commission proposed this in response to calls by the Council and the European Parliament to address these challenges, and that's why this proposal is now being discussed. So it's three things, right? The Commission proposed this because there was an issue that they defined, they know of, we know of. It is generally accepted this is the case. And the Council, which are member states, your government, my government, 27 governments, and the Parliament, again, people from all of the member states directly elected by people, they said to the Commission, hey, this is a problem. Could you work out something to fix it? If the Parliament wants to address child sexual abuse online, that's why they asked the Commission along with the Council to find a solution. But since chat control was proposed, the parliamentary stance has shifted, and currently it's contested at best, and Parliament is not seeming at this point to be in favor of the proposed regulation and to approve it once the stage moves to Parliament approval. So that leaves us with the Council of the EU. And who is represented in the Council? I ask you again, who is paying attention? Yeah. That's right. It's national governments of EU member states. And this is where we don't only have to reflect on our own, and this is not only where we have to reflect on our own governments, but this is also where we come back to my good friend Denmark. I realized I can move in the room, so let's be in the nook for a while. This is quite cozy. So I mentioned at the start that Denmark has also been taking some of the heat in the media for pushing chat control. But I'm sorry to disappoint you again. Again, it's not that simple. Denmark is not necessarily the bad guy here. And hey, I know. All right, trust me, I know. I would love to shit on Denmark. I would love to. I mean, actually, I'm kind of itching for it right now, and it might make sense to make a separate video about the various weird ways that Denmark has been undermining European cooperation for decades. Love the Danish people. Nothing against the Danish people, but the government, the national stance. I mean, there's so much to nitpick, to not like, to take issue with. But just in this video, we can't really be, as I hope is clear by now, devoid of the nuance of this topic. But I promise you in the Denmark video, if I make it, there'll be no nuance there, bucko. But here in this video, for this topic, Denmark might be a kind of a bad guy, but definitely not the bad guy. Not the main evil on the streets. But Denmark in the sheets. Get at me in the comments, Danish people. Something that I have found to be missing in a lot of the chat control coverage is sort of the secondary reason why EU member states want to pass it, like get rid of it, just be done with it and move on with their lives. And that's because chat control, the proposal has been stuck in the council for, I think, sort of like 3 years-ish, maybe over 3 years now. And it's really starting to get inconvenient for them because there is this other regulation 2021/1232, for those who are going to look it up later, you saucy devils. And that regulation, essentially, by the way, is chat control because it limits the protections in the e-privacy directive that talks about the rights to privacy online using online services. So chat control already exists. It has existed at least since 2021, but it was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to expire on the 3rd of August 2024 because there was already supposed to be a replacement by that time. But because they can't reach an agreement, they keep postponing that end date and prolonging this old chat control regulation so that they can replace it with this new one. And unfortunately, the end does not seem to be anywhere near in sight. But that's another secondary explanation as to why some countries seem eager to get it passed. It's not necessarily because they agree or want even surveillance to be done. They're happy to pass it with that removed, for example. They don't want it to pass with those surveillance measures in place, but they do want to pass it anyway because they want to offer some protections and they don't want that old law to expire without an adequate replacement. If you look at the available documents on the website of the Council of the EU from their meetings on chat control over the past 9 months or so, which, I have because I'm cool like that. And hey, it's 1 o'clock. Time for council dogs, baby. But if you do take your time and look at those documents, even skim through them very quickly, you will see the absolutely hilarious number of revisions, notes, compromises, strike-throughs, highlights, reversals, rearrangements that were made to the chat control proposal over the past, I think, 3 years now, but there have been over 40 changes or 40 notes on the changes since January 2025, which, oof, that's tough. I mean, imagine that being your job. Imagine your sole job for years is nothing but just rewriting the one proposal, changing tiny words, then reversing them back, and literally just not moving anywhere. It must be horrible. And, unfortunately, it's a real opaque process. So we don't quite know exactly which country stands where, because it's also moving very quickly. So countries can sort of change their points of view. But we know that Germany seems to be a strong opponent of chat control, and they seem to be, at least from what I've seen thus far, very much in favor of securing online privacy for EU citizens. Then we have member states like Estonia, Slovenia, the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, Austria, who abstained in the past, but may not do so next vote. So they're kind of on the fence, and we don't know when and where they'll be leaning towards or again in opposition of chat control. Austria, Finland, France appear to be thinking of or have already introduced some form of their own chat control nationally. So it stands to reason that they are more prone to thinking and accepting these kind of laws at the EU level as well. For now, we just simply don't know. And of course, that brings us to lovely Denmark. Now, Denmark's government is pretty clear on what they're hoping to achieve during their presidency. Their EU presidency program, that's available online and will be linked in the description, says that passing chat control is a high priority for them, and states, and now I quote, that law enforcement authorities must have the necessary tools, including access to data, to investigate and prosecute crimes effectively. Now, to my ears, that sounds like, yes, we want chat control, and we want government agencies, whether through some automated processes or maybe through direct action from law enforcement directly, to be able to read and scan messages to the detriment of privacy online at this point, but as some people are afraid, potentially freedom of expression going forward. So what is the conclusion of this video? I understand that tempers might be running quite high right now. Really high? Higher? I know this is a lot. You might be feeling probably pretty exhausted by now. I know I am. And that is if you're still here at all. Because to be honest, listening someone talk about chat control and EU directives and regulations and the EU Council and member states and the Commission for more than 10 minutes, I admire you. That means you care. And I really appreciate you for that. So thank you for sticking with us, with me. I don't know why I said with us. There's nobody. I hope there's nobody here. If you are an EU citizen, that means if you hold the nationality of any of the 27 member states of the EU, that makes you an EU citizen. There are some things that you can, but maybe even should, do. Right now, at this point, depending on when you're watching the video, there are two important dates to remember. The 12th of September is the date where member states are supposed to finalize their positions on the current proposal for chat control. And then on the 14th of October, they're supposed to take the final vote. But don't worry if you're watching this video past those deadlines, because as we've talked about, it is very possible that chat control is still there in the council, stuck in this weird deadlock where it's been rotting there in many different iterations, unable to move forward, unable to reach a forum that the 27 member states would agree on accepting and then passing it to the European Parliament for their vote. So it might not be too late, even if it's past those dates. It's definitely not late if it's before those dates. And yes, you may have predicted this. The things you can do are limited. You are only one person. You can't save the world as much as you might want to. You torturing yourself and living in anger over policies and injustices in the world won't make the world a better place. It will just make you a worse, more bitter depressed person, a person that can't spread joy and influence the things you can control, the people around you, your own situation. So please, whatever you do, try to do your bit. And this is what the video and hopefully this channel going forward is meant to help you and myself as well do. It is meant to help you do your part as a part of a big democratic structure, a big machine that you are merely a part of. And take some of this anger, anxiety, and frustration out. Because if you do what you can do, then there's no point about beating yourself up over what you can't. Now, I know this is very easy to say and very hard to accept, but what I can offer is just that little bit of control, that little bit of control and power that you have is in contacting your national government representatives, especially at this point, your, as far as I understand, ministers of justice, ministers of the interior, the prime minister's office or the president's office, depending on where you live, directly. Then you also want to contact your members of the European Parliament, depending on where you live. This might not be in the member state that you are from. If you live in another member state, that would be the MEP from your country, your new country of residence, or just the region that you're currently living in. Be sure to contact them via the most appropriate source, which for most of them is email, but some do reach out on social media. But be aware that, you know, politicians, they're not the most modern people. So email is probably a good way to go about it, but definitely double check. I will leave some helpful resources below. Again, this has been a very general bird's eye view overview. There are more in-depth sources, including sources that will help you track down which people specifically to contact. I'll leave all of those down below. Some of those links that I find helpful and I think would be helpful for you, both when it comes to learning more and finding out who to contact, how to contact them, including some templates for the emails. Because remember, you can just use one template, fill it in, send it to all of them, the same version. Don't sweat it, don't spend too much time on it, but take your time to address it if you can. So you can find those links in the description. Finally, I wanted to take a quick second to say something that I'm sure we all already know. But sometimes we can get lost in the heat of the moment, and it's good to have a reminder. I just wanted to encourage everybody to stay kind and respectful. This is definitely a serious matter. Emotions can run high, and we should use that passion to be proactive, to try to enact some kind of change, to do our bit within the system, not to fix everything because that we can't, but to help get there a millimeter closer to what we think is right. But again, don't forget that this is not necessarily some evil master plan to take over the world and make Europe into literally 1984 for fun. This doesn't have a bad evil guy, as much as it might seem like it does from the media, as much as it might seem like it does from what some of your politicians say, what it just appears maybe even at first glance. But I hope this video showed you that unfortunately the EU system is quite complex. And when we say the EU, this is not some nameless, faceless, unique entity that exists outside of everything else. The EU is made up mostly of our politicians, either directly elected in the European Parliament, our technocrats appointed into the Commission by people that we elect directly, or our own national governments in the European Council or the Council of the European Union. Again, chat control just seems like a well-intentioned but vastly overreaching measure to protect children online from sexual abuse. The problem is that it would potentially deprive us of our privacy online, and then as our freedoms derogate further and further and we are surveilled more and more, potentially it could be also used for political gain, and that's not good. That's not good. That's not good. I don't claim to have the solution, but this is not good. So it is important to care. Be passionate. Just don't be a hovado. All right. I'm off to grab a Danish. Ciao. Forgot my wallet.